Newton, Tex. For the streets of Newton, a small town on the Texas side of the Louisiana state line, to become impassable, the flood would have to be biblical, Kristen Rogers was told when she peeked into the sheriff's office looking for guidance. That's what they said about Houston, replied Ms. Rogers, who was looking for a dry way out of rural Texas on her way to Florida. Houston, the urban behemoth that has so far been a focal point in the unfolding drama of Hurricane Harvey, began gingerly to assess the devastation. But the storm marched on to conquer a vast new swath speckled with small towns that are home to millions of people who were shocked anew by Harvey's tenaciously destructive power. Officials faced a population in dire need, but far more difficult to reach. Flooding and rain, topping 47 inches in some areas, pounded 50 counties in southeast and lower central Texas with a combined population of roughly 11 million people. The area includes more than 300 towns and smaller cities that felt the storm's punishing force, even as Harvey was downgraded to a tropical depression on Wednesday. The Federal Emergency Management Agency began to send out heavy-lift military helicopters carrying tons of food and drinking water, delivering it to people who could not evacuate. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas said officials were immediately deploying far more members of the National Guard to southeast Texas, increasing the total Guard deployment to 24,000, including 10,000 troops from other states. In contrast to Houston, where the weather began to clear and a few children even returned to playgrounds, many people in these remote areas are still in desperate need of rescue. There are a lot of places that are not accessible by car or truck or boat, and we need to get to the survivors to get them critical aid, said Deanna Fraser, a FEMA spokeswoman. Pleas for help poured out of the Beaumont-Port Arthur area, roughly 100 miles east of Houston. We are just as devastated as the Houston area, said Captain Crystal Holmes of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, which includes Port Arthur, a coastal city of about 55,000. When officials they were caught off guard by the scale of the floods, and one emergency shelter started flooding. A Max Bowl bowling alley was transformed into a haven for about 500 people, the owner said. For every rescue accomplished, Captain Holmes said, there seemed to be more people who needed help. We have so many citizens that are trapped inside their homes. Eventually we will get to them, she said, but we just don't know if we're going to be able to get to them in time. The police at Beaumont, near Port Arthur, said they had received more than 700 calls for rescue, and other departments were overwhelmed with calls for help. A mother died with her toddler, who survived, clinging to her body, and the number of deaths attributed to the storm climbed to at least 38. The geographic scope of this event is probably what is going to make it one of the most costly flood disasters in U.S. history, said Samuel Brody, the director of the Center for Texas Beaches and Shores at Texas A&M University's Galveston campus. I've seen heavy rain, I've seen 30, 40 inches, but not over such a large geographic area, impacting rich, poor, black, white, you name it. Pasture land and swampland, cane fields and forests alike began to look like a mud-clouded, Texas version of Ark Country. Crosby, 25 miles northeast of Houston, faced not only flooding but the risk of an explosion when refrigeration that kept compounds at a chemical plant stable failed. And still, as of Wednesday afternoon, the rain poured down. Michael LeBouef, a retired surgical assistant who lives in Port Arthur, said airboats, fishing boats and helicopters, operating out of the Walmart parking lot, were running rescue missions. The town looks like a lake, it really does, he said. It's like the whole town got dropped into Lake Sabine. Even before it hit Houston, Harvey had already deluged a band of smaller cities. What about the rest of us? A man named Sam Stone posted on Facebook on behalf of the lower Texas coast towns Aransas Pass, Port Aransas, Ingleside, and Rockport, which took the storm head-on. No jobs to go back to, no money, no transportation. All they do is sit and worry about what happens next. In Liberty County northeast of Houston, tiny Moss Hill, a couple of restaurants, a couple of churches, had become a refuge for people fleeing the water, which began to creep onto the highways about a mile from town. Moss Hill is the highest point in the area, and the Lighthouse Church attracted a steady stream of people seeking shelter, while a trail of pickup trucks towing fishing boats passed through on the way to Point Cease. More than 20 people spent the night at the church. For the most part, they had fled homes nearby. But there was also a man from Florida who was rescued from his car and dropped off there. Newlyweds who,